So recently, I had one of my cousins come over my house, and we were talking about the subject of the driver's license. And we were talking about this because he had recently renewed his license, and he was talking about how funny the picture looked, and he had asked them to retake the picture, and they didn't let him. So he was showing me the picture on his driver's license. But when I looked at his license, I noticed something interesting. I noticed that the first letter and the first three numbers on his driver's license are exactly the same as mine. Now, I think we all know that the letter in your driver's license stands for your last name, but I didn't know that the first three numbers had any significance or meaning behind them. So, because me and my cousin have the same letter and number combination in the beginning of our license, this prompted us to ask other family members. Because the interesting thing about this is that we have driver's licenses from two different states. So, we began asking other family members, they began checking their license, and lo and behold, we have family members in multiple states, not just in the state of Maryland, but in Florida, in Pennsylvania, New York, and multiple other states. And all of us have the same exact code in the beginning of our license. So this led me to believe that the first letter and the first three numbers represent some sort of code for your last name. So I wanted to research this a little bit further. So I first started by researching the driver's license because this is a code in our driver's license. So of course I thought it had something to do with the driver's license itself, some sort of code system for the driver's license, in America. But in fact, what I found out is that the history of the driver's license only goes back roughly 100 years. And in fact, the first driver's license was issued in 1903, but it wasn't until the 1930s. By the 1930s, only half of these states even required a driver's license. And it wasn't until like the late 50s, I believe, that they began to require a driver's license in every state. So we can say that the driver's license itself is roughly 100 years old, give or take. But what I found out about the code embedded in our driver's license is that this code predates the time of the driver's license or the invention of a driver's license. This code was actually created before the driver's license was created. The Soundex Code system was created in 1790 by the newly found government that was set up by the invading white races in the United States. And they did this so they could track the population using a code for their last name. So every last name in America now has a Soundex code. This code can be found in your driver's license, and it represents your last name or your surname, and it represents the multiple variations of spellings of your last name for the past 228 years. And the government allows us to access the National Archives database, but they only allow us to go back for 72 years. So we can't fully access the full 228 years of our history. And there's really no logical explanation why they would keep so much of this history secret. And it makes me wonder what they're trying to hide and what they're afraid that people will find out. Because they've been tracking your family name for the past 228 years, yet they won't allow you to access it, even though they have the power to reunite you with every one of your family members in the United States today, but they will not. And you have to understand that when they created this census and they created this code to track everyone's surname, this was done during a very pivotal time. It was done during the time that they were having many dealings with the Indians, and it was also done during a time that the so-called slave trade was going on in America. So I actually Googled my Soundex code to see if anything would come up. And it was interesting because a few documents actually popped up, and you can do this yourself if you type in and I circled here the Soundex code in your driver's license. This is just a sample driver's license, but so this one would be, you would type in Soundex code S123. Now, of course, you're going to type in whatever your Soundex code is on your specific driver's license and just see what comes up. I was interested to find a few things under my own Soundex code. A few things popped up. So two important documents. One of them was showing a list of about 25 different family members with the same Soundex code. So another document that I found online also that had the Soundex code that represents my last name was a document that I found of a man from North Carolina. And he had the same Soundex code as my family's last name, but he was classified as an Indian prisoner. So I think that this is something that needs to be researched further. I think individually we need to start looking at this, look at our driver's license, start looking at our Soundex code that represents our surnames. I think it's time that we start asking questions. I think we need to really dissect this coding system a little bit better. And maybe we as the people need to petition access to these records going back 228 years, because there is no other logical explanation why we cannot access these records other than the fact that they are trying to hide something. And my guess is that if we were actually able to access these records 228 years back, we would discover a few things that white people do not want us to know.